I think nuclear is gaining huge momentum right now for so many different reasons. First, in the previous administration, under like a decarbonization umbrella, the energy transition is what they called it, RIP. And then after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it became energy security, to reduce reliance on Russian uranium, Russian energy sources. And then now, trifold data centers. The administration's priority is to win the AI race. And data centers have such a huge thirst for energy. Renewables aren't going to cut it. Nuclear is 24/7. It's baseload power. It's carbon free. There's no option to win a data center race, an AI race, without nuclear, at least in the mix.
Just because the facts are A, if the narrative is B and everyone believes the narrative, then B is what matters. But it's our job in our industry to speak up proudly, soberly, and to engage people in this dialogue. Those 2.5 billion people that are in energy poverty, they need us.
America cannot meet this threat alone.
If there is a single country,
of course, the world cannot meet it without America.
that is willing to
But we're going to need you, the next generation, to finish the
overhaul
job.
nuclear regulation,
We need scientists to design new fuels.
focus on net public
We need
benefit
engineers to invent new technologies. We need
over absurd levels of radiation protection,
entrepreneurs to sell those
then
technologies.
we will march towards this.
We need workers to operate assembly lines that hum with high-tech,
We
zero-carbon
have
components.
unlimited prosperity for all humans.
We need diplomats and businessmen and women and Peace Corps volunteers to help developing nations skip past the dirty phase of development and transition to sustainable sources of energy. In other words, we need you.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Fire to Fission podcast, where we talk about energy-dense fuels and how they can better human lives. Today, we're joined by Stephanie Fishman, who is a senior associate at Hogan-Lovells. Stephanie, stoked to have you here chatting. We were just looking at our list of questions before we started recording, and we're like, we're not going to stick to the script. Yeah, definitely. For the audience's benefit, give us quick overview on your background, who you are, set the stage for us.
Sure. Well, thanks, Mark, for having me here today. I am currently a nuclear regulatory attorney at a large firm in Washington, D.C., specializing in all things nuclear and fusion. But it took me a while to get
and
here.
Fusion? Are we not calling nuclear fusion?
No, we are not. It has
We're
got
not
to
calling
be
fusion nuclear?
You've got to change your name to Fire to Fission and Fusion. Make
Fire
sure
and
people know.
nuclear.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it took me a while to get here. I studied nuclear engineering at the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and right out of college was recruited by the intelligence community to come work for them using my technical degree. But of course, you're 18, you want to be a spy, and then you turn 22, and the idea of going to Yemen doesn't sound so great all of a sudden. Very luckily, my recruiter was like, "What do you think about going to work for DoD, still doing nuclear for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA?" And I was like, yes, sign me up. So I was a part of a team doing global nuclear security, which is essentially I was handling high threat radioactive material and weapons grade material in various countries overseas, securing it, training militaries and foreign governments on how to secure those facilities. Really fun stuff. The areas I was working in were Kazakhstan, South Africa, and Jordan, which each have the most exciting, diverse nuclear histories and just sort of nuclear setups, if you will. So happy to delve into more
You got
details
an Arabic minor? Was that
Yeah.
That surely.
It was awful. It was awful. My GPA was horrible. I studied abroad at Oxford. I was like, why am I doing the hardest things?
Yeah, nice.
So luckily, so taking time working before going to law school separates your GPA in a way that really law schools were most concerned about the LSAT score at that point, which was
That's helpful. Yeah,
exactly.
Easier to gain that one than your
GPA. But when I was in Jordan, I was helping the government draft regulations from scratch for the new research reactor they were setting up at the University of Science and Technology. And I was like, wow, I love this. I'm going to go to law school and be a nuclear regulatory attorney. Said probably no one ever, but that's what
Nice.
led me to where I am today.
This dynamic's really interesting. I guess this hadn't clicked before we started recording right now, and you just described it. Like, my wife's an attorney, and
Okay.
I'm an engineer, right? And
Imagine
I've
being
heard it.
both.
Yeah, right. I've heard it described as like different modes of thinking. Like engineering, you're thinking from the ground up to find a conclusion, right? Like looking at all the facts and
Yeah.
trying to deduce the conclusion, and then like attorneys start with the end in mind and like work backwards to justify their case. So yeah, having that dynamism in the same human is
It's rare. And
yeah,
in
rare.
fact, like
But like good, like the LSAT is like a rational, logical thinking test, right?
of
And like
course, but even
engineering trains you for
in
that.
my role every day as an attorney, like people are so surprised to know that I have a technical background, because I can speak clearly
Yeah,
about technical topics to regulators, policymakers, business executives without like making their brains hurt. So like, who knew that like being such like a science minded person also meant you probably weren't going to be a good communicator?
right, right. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So, working abroad, do you have any good stories from that? Like anything that comes to mind that you could share? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's like just such a different,
It is. It is. And
different
like
job.
I'm like at a loss of like, do I start with Kazakhstan, where I was securing warehouses of thorium where the Russians did their like original nuclear testing? Or do I want to talk about South Africa, which this is all public information, by the way, at this point. But, South Africa was a nuclear weapons country,
Yeah,
thanks to the Israelis. And during apartheid, you had the white government afraid that a new black government was going to be in charge of this nuclear weapons program that was clandestine at the time. So they quickly said, hey, United States, hey, IAEA, hey, West, please help us dismantle this program. DOE did an awful job at the time with a low budget. They just put everything into these drums. So like you didn't know if you were going to be opening up a drum with soil, gloves, shovels, or a drum with actually enriched uranium in it, which made the facility quite susceptible to theft, to terrorism. Because if you could get your hands on the lucky drum,
yeah,
it's pretty good. So as someone who's not boots on the ground, I didn't appear military or threatening in that way to our sensitive South African counterparts. They sent me as like someone to manage this project now and do a material breakdown and like characterization of each drum so that we could, implement high security for the ones of value and maybe leave the other ones on the outside of the gate. And it's fascinating. I was probably the only female from the US to ever step foot at this site out in Pelindaba, and like such an invaluable experience. Like
that's awesome.
really cool, especially because like for the first half of my career, I couldn't
Is
even
in South
talk
Africa?
about this.
Where
Yeah.
and where in South Africa?
Yeah. It's in Pretoria, which is in Pelindaba. So
We
like
we
an
missed that
hour outside of
country on our
Joburg.
lap around the world. I still want to go. So
Yeah, and it's pretty far. It's pretty
yeah,
far, but like it's also quite dangerous country, at times. They speak 12 national languages.
yeah,
It's politically really volatile, but a really exciting place to go. I've never been to Cape Town. I heard that's the place to be.
yeah. Okay, so we got introduced by Jared Berg,
We
right? My
did.
mutual friend. I went to college with him, and you guys went to law school together?
We didn't. We went to
Oh,
high school
high
together.
school
Yeah,
together.
so you
Yeah,
like throw it back
in
even
Denver,
further.
right? Or yeah.
In
Right.
Dallas.
Oh, in Dallas.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Okay. I just saw him. We had breakfast 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, because he was at the Permian Basin
Yeah.
conference as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. He was at the Powering the Permian conference. Awesome.
Cool.
Have you kept up with him much? Like,
No, in fact, he reached out to me because his firm, he's interested in like building out more of a nuclear practice at his firm. There's only 4 large law firms that do nuclear, all of which are in DC. But it's funny. A topic I've been talking about for so long is now like dinner party conversation.
right.
And like my parents are asking about it, which they've never asked me about it before. All of a sudden, like everyone wants to talk about it. And yes, there's a ton of nuclear influencers and everyone's now an expert, but it's kind of nice to have been someone who's established in the nuclear world who can now talk about these things with people who are for the first time interested.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why do you think it's becoming popular? And why are there only 4 law firms that specialize in this?
Others will say they do it. Like you probably could go to a variety of like firms that have energy practices and there would be like a bullet point on nuclear, but you really need to see like which attorneys are actually doing the nuclear work because there's really not that many of us. It's such a small world. So I'm not sure. And maybe more will come, like even take Jared, he's a partner at his firm and he has an interest in growing out a nuclear practice. And even the fact that states, which historically had been very anti-nuclear or just had no nuclear opportunities whatsoever, like multiple states have new legislation opening opportunities for nuclear. So I'm attorneys follow the money, follow the business opportunities. So that's just like one reason on the law firm side. I think nuclear is gaining huge momentum right now for so many different reasons. First in the previous administration under like a decarbonization umbrella, the energy transition is what they called it, RIP. And then after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it became energy security, to reduce reliance on Russian uranium, Russian energy sources. And then now, trifold data centers. The administration's priority is to win the AI race. And data centers have such a huge thirst for energy. Renewables aren't going to cut it. Nuclear is 24/7. It's baseload power. It's carbon free. There's no option to win a data center race, an AI race without nuclear, at least in the mix. So all 3, I think, large concepts and themes and priorities have what made nuclear such a hot topic today. Plus there's like influencers now on TikTok. So people are seeing it that maybe wouldn't have seen it before.
Gotcha. I love it. I love it. Why? So you mentioned this, I think, briefly, but why did you decide to pivot from doing like the security stuff to going back to law school and saying, "Wow, I really want to do this"? What attracted you to law?
Yeah, it's a huge question because living the life. I had a diplomat passport. I was traveling to all these countries. But I was doing the most. I didn't need to be my boss, who at the time was like a Navy admiral sitting in an office managing people like me. And I didn't need more countries added to my Rolodex. And I also think I was working in a pretty exclusive weapons field, weapons grade materials, high threat rad materials field. I always knew nuclear energy would be important just by virtue of having studied it. So it just seems like such a natural pivot. Like I could talk the talk and walk around the Pentagon pretty proudly as like someone who was understanding the concepts of nuclear, the buildup of it all. And then, the law thing, I'm not sure. I don't even know. I knew there were nuclear lawyers in DC. I had like seen, partners, Amy Roma, Jeff Merrifield, like they existed. And like, to me, they were combining like such fascinating topics, like both like on an academic level and on a technical level. So that was probably the draw.
There's not a lot of these attorneys that are like specialists, but do you think there's a growing need?
Absolutely.
Like if somebody's listening, they're like, "Man, we should go explore this in our law practice." Or
I get calls from law students all the time who like maybe have an interest in energy, but now want to specialize in nuclear and like want to know what courses they should take to like get the attention of like a law firm that does nuclear. What kinds of articles should they be reading? Should they be, what kind of topics should they be writing on to get published in this area? Absolutely a need, but it is such a specific field that the interest has to be there first. You hear a lot of FERC attorneys who just fell into it. I would say you don't need a technical background to be successful in nuclear regulatory work, but you do need to have an interest.
You have to be able to read a lot and read fast.
That's for sure. And yes, for sure. Reading is pretty key.
It's key to being a lawyer.
You can't do it without it.
That's why I became an engineer. It's tough to read. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And like honestly, now you could probably do more podcasts and like
right.
audiobooks.
The audio and video platform we've written some stuff too. But okay, I want to touch on export controls.
Fascinating. Okay.
I don't know.
Why?
this is a topic that I'm curious about because we're developing like SMRs in different countries, right? Like
Sure,
there's like
yeah.
Copenhagen Atomics, and then there's a bunch in America and like some in Canada, but like we can't have people from all over the world working on these things, right? Like this is kind of a nuance of the industry. How do you?
In the
I don't know.
US, we can't have people from around the world working on this, or
I don't know.
overseas.
Can we? Yeah. Like, are there special rules about this or?
There there are, and they've actually somewhat changed in the past year or so. During the Cold War, just to take us back there,
Nice.
the Atomic Energy Act had a provision called Foreign Ownership, Dominion, and Control, FOCD, which effectively prohibited foreign entities from owning or controlling or having like 50% ownership domination over nuclear and assets or entities in the US. And that was for national security purposes. Um, so this is twofold. We can get into like export controls of like the technology itself, but in
Yeah.
terms of like personnel and international partnerships generally, we were sort of limited. The US was limited in the partnerships that could establish international collaboration because of this pretty dated, pretty specific provision under the Atomic Energy Act, the FOCD. The Advance Act, 2024 Biden Advance Act, it redefined FOCD from the AEA. So it proposed an amendment to the Atomic Energy Act to eliminate the FOCD restrictions. And it has some qualifying language that like partnerships can only be with OECD nations plus India. India is like very specified as like a separate entity on its own, which has its own rationale. But now foreign entities can not only invest in like US nuclear operations industry, they could be an owner. No one's done it yet on paper because you still have to declare it and like file with the NRC. But this is a huge opportunity for
Yeah.
both foreign
I was gonna say
investment
that's like really impactful, right? Like,
massively and just for partnerships generally. Like if we, and like I could talk about this forever, but like think about construction in the US. We don't do it very often, hence why our grid is so old and why bridges are crumbling. We repair things when they are broken. And that's the same for large scale nuclear projects. We don't build them well. Q Vogel, it's the poster child for being out of budget and over schedule. Now look at China. You know, they deploy AP1000s on a mass scale. They've got 40, I think, under construction and 30 planned. It is a rinse and repeat operation. Also take Korea. They built, Baraka is the poster child, the opposite of Vogel. They built it on time, on budget, because they do it all the time. They're not in first of a kind mode. They're in nth of a kind mode. So like leveraging skills, experience, technology from other countries, I think will also help mass deployment of nuclear in the US, both on like a large light water reactor level and on advanced reactor level. So that doesn't really get into export control if we're talking technology and like how does like a Westinghouse get its parts over to Belarus. Those are a different set of laws that falls under NRC jurisdiction and DOE jurisdiction, depending on if we're talking about foreign assistance, which would be under DOE Part 810, or if we're talking about actual nuclear reactor components, which would be NRC's Part 110. It's very technical.
why? Well, first off, I think you
Yeah.
just underscored like why attorneys are necessary.
Sure. I mean, I can just like quote regulations
Yeah,
like with my
right.
eyes closed. Don't
I mean,
test
let me
me.
just quote standards. When you think about, well, there's been a lot of talk about reducing regulations.
Yeah.
Um, how that's really impactful for nuclear, right? Like people say, when I talk to investors, or when I was talking to investors for the past couple of years, people were skittish to invest in nuclear because regulations were too onerous and permitting timelines were too long. And that was like a primary veto card that partners at investment firms would play. Is that changing? Like, there's a lot of talk about it changing. How is it changing? I know timelines, like NRC has said that they're accelerating some timelines. Like, what's kind of your view on this?
So first I'll talk about the NRC and what's happening right there, but then I'll also talk about investment in the space.
Sure.
and why
Oh,
I don't think there's
investments
yeah.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
All right.
exactly.
When I said previous, right? Like, so like when I was
Got it.
talking to folks in like 22, 23,
Got
24,
it. I was like, I
it
feel like
was,
there's if
it was
you've got a
like,
slide deck, you'll get investment.
yeah, yeah. It was like, nope, never going to happen. We're never going to touch nuclear because
Yeah,
regulations. And then like in the past 12 months, it's exploded, right? So
right. And it's going to
it's
be
to the moon.
the
Yeah.
regulatory impact to like advanced reactors and deploying small modular reactors is going to be so interesting. I think one like application to watch will be the Fermi application. Um, because from a technical legal perspective, it appeared to have significant deficiencies in it. But this will be a good test of whether the NRC is going to be steamrolling these applications through because of political pressures and because of like negative propaganda on like regulatory structures being too slow,
And I
or
guess
are they
people
going?
know what Fermi is. Sorry to cut you off.
It is.
Like
It's
they're
the
going
name
public
is
now, right?
no,
Yeah.
no, of course. It is. I don't even think Fermi is the actual name. It's not an acronym, but it's
Right.
the advanced nuclear reactor that's being that will be constructed in Texas. I actually think it's called like the Donald Trump
It's like a
nuclear
whole
data center.
campus
Yeah,
of
exactly.
energy center, right?
Exactly.
Old energy secretary
Right.
Perry, yeah, his project, previous energy secretary, right? Like,
Yeah.
so.
So the NRC has always had this pressure. Now they've said they can start reviewing these applications within 18 months, and I believe that they can. The commission, we've seen them do it before. We've seen them do it with Kairos. Like we know it's possible. It's a two-way street. Applicants, businesses need to engage in pre-application with the NRC so they know what the NRC is looking for, and vice versa, and that will make things go smoother. I think fear of like regulatory hurdles is attributed to like a lack of understanding on how the agency works and what the regulations require. Because like we're working with companies every day on submitting applications, and like we have contacts at the NRC on getting these through and like understanding what's needed. We respond to requests for additional information. So like I think when you work with qualified attorneys who like specialize in this space, like there are way less regulatory uncertainties associated with these types of projects. Not to like plug working, with
Like,
me,
well, it might be hard, but you could just
but
hire
like
us.
it's not that scary actually if you just hire great counsel. But like
Yeah.
at the same time, we're seeing such a paradigm shift. Like back to like the capital, like VC is just pumping money into all of these new companies, startups. It doesn't matter if bets are being placed on failing products because we won't know that yet. And the NRC has never experienced that. They're operating under the paradigm of the Westinghouses and the GEHs that are the owners and the operators and the designers and the developers. And now they're going to have to field applications and pre-application engagement from all these new entrants and new designers, and without utilities in sight. Like these companies want to own and operate on their own. So a regulatory shift will need to happen. And you can tell the NRC even before this administration has had an appetite for it, because before even a Part 53, which is a framework that's been drafted to specifically license small modular reactors and advanced reactors, they were reviewing applications for this technology under the existing Part 50, Part 52, which isn't best case, but the fact that they were even willing to review them under an existing framework is illustrative of their appetite to get these technologies online.
A great answer, right? But the pre-application process, how
Yeah.
long does this typically take? I mean,
It can take, it
there's a
depends.
range of
Yeah, of
things, but like
course.
what is it, right? Because we said, okay, 18 months to get a permit, right? And like coming from the oil and gas space, where like federal permits take the longest. It's 12 months. Like you submit the permit and
Yeah.
you go, right? If you have to do an EIS, God forbid, then it's 5 years. And maybe in Colorado, it's like 18 months to 2 years to get a drilling permit. But like in Texas, I've gotten a drilling permit over the weekend. Like
Love
submitted
that.
Friday, had permission to drill on Monday afternoon. It was scheduled to move her again 3 weeks later. Like
God bless Texas.
I want that in the
Yeah.
nuclear industry, right?
Sure. And maybe one day we'll get there.
Yeah, that's what we're
Like
aiming
we're
for.
like these things haven't been built yet. Like we're still in first of a kind. Like
Yeah.
once like something stands up, once steel goes into the ground and electrons are put onto the grid, and that we can get into like nth of a kind situation, it'll be de-risked for investors. resources can be streamlined. The regulatory, approvals will be streamlined, but we're just not there yet. We're still on first of a kind, which is a really difficult spot to be in, especially when we need to be seizing today's unprecedented political, public, private momentum, for nuclear. Like, if we miss it, it may public opinion may swing in the opposite direction, and that could stick. But pre-application engagement can take anywhere from 6 months to a year on average, generally speaking, and depending on how well prepared you are, having some nuclear regulatory counsel, having worked at the NRC myself right after law school, like, it's nice having friends, the ones that are still working there, at the agency. It's nice to be able to make phone calls, set up meetings with senior staff, do drop-in meetings with the commissioners to make sure like they're aware of your technology before you even begin pre-application engagement. So like when your official transmittal letter comes through the door, they already know who you are.
Right.
Like, all of those things help.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, there's people on the other side of this, like managing these processes, right? It's not like a TurboTax wizard, which is also set up by people, but like,
Yeah.
trying to negotiate with
Yeah,
like an
and
AI
it's
chatbot.
hard. Like, if you just look at what's happened to the NRC right now, their general counsel was dismissed. There were 2 commissioners fired. Their EDO is gone. Half their staff is gone. Like, it's a different agency, but maybe it's a good thing because we're in a different paradigm. Like, the calculus for nuclear applications, for nuclear technology has completely changed. So like, maybe it's not such a horrible thing that the agency is going to be physically shifting as well.
So I give the analogy of like getting these things licensed without actually building them first. Feels like never skating on ice in your life and being expected to make like a shot from all the way across the ice, like hockey shot, right?
Sure.
On your first try, and like not practicing, not having any experience. Is that an apt analogy, or do you think that like this is I don't know, I've got a view of like we should just be able to go and build a bunch of them, and I the maybe faster way to summarize it is like this paradigm between asking for forgiveness and asking for permission. And it feels like there's a lot of asking for permission in the nuclear industry, and like nobody will ever. There's this view that like if you have to ask for forgiveness, then it's going to bankrupt you and like ruin your country and destroy your community.
Wrong. Yeah. It's horrible. It's not an industry where you can build a prototype. You know what I mean? There's that.
But it is that we're building 10 of them, right? Like with the DOE.
But they won't be. Okay. So sure. That is the workaround. Like, look at Oklo. It's fully put its shovel into the sand, and it does not have an NRC approval to start construction because it's used under the DOE reactor pilot program.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we're seeing. The president has, rather than previously where politicians will get behind a business and throw money at a technology, the current president is throwing authority at DOE. So now, I don't want to say it's reprising the olden days of the Atomic Energy Commission, but like DOE now has through the EOs, its own authority to like circumvent NRC processes to stand some of these designs up on their own. And that's never happened before. So like we'll need to see what happens. DOE will have to indemnify because of the Price-Anderson Act themselves, because they'll be, owner operator with these companies.
Can you just talk through like what that means?
Yeah.
Like, that was some legalese in there. I understand it, but I don't know that everyone actually is gonna.
The Price-Anderson Act is actually like one of the biggest things to give investors some like confidence. It is the nuclear liability regime in the United States, and it basically says if there's like a nuclear incident, a nuclear event, a nuclear occurrence, and those are also terms of art in the act. That liability is channeled strictly to the operator. So now contractors, tech companies, owners won't be afraid to invest in this space and set up projects because it is a strict liability mechanism for the operator. And there's a pool of money that the US and DOE and private companies all play into that money would come out of. And this is huge. So in Colorado, a few years ago, more than that, 10 years ago, There was a league at Rock. It was a lawsuit between Rockwell Chemical and Dow. Rockwell and Dow. Sorry, this has been so long.
Okay. That's
And
another
there was
perspective, yeah.
contamination that had gone into the soil. The community sued, and they sued under regular tort law. And Neil Gorsuch in the circuit court said that it didn't qualify as like a Price-Anderson Act event. It wasn't like a nuclear occurrence. He thought it was like a nuclear one-off. And there was billions in the payout under standard tort law versus money that would have come out of the pool that's designated for this type of event under Price-Anderson Act. It's really meant to protect the industry, but while also compensating for any potential harm and injury.
So we said here's a carve out in tort law that nuclear gets because it's impact.
Not even that. This community used tort law instead of filing under a claim under the Price-Anderson Act, and Neil Gorsuch agreed. You know, defendants, the nuclear industry, were like, this needs to be covered under Price-Anderson Act and like the liability insurance that's associated with that. And the judge said, no, this would fall under regular Colorado tort law. And that was a pretty impactful case in the industry. And
when was that?
2015.
2015. Oh yeah, was that Rocky Flats then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Rockwell and Dow. Yeah.
Okay.
And like, don't quote me on like the particulars, but I just know the Price-Anderson Act wasn't utilized. There was a small technical wording glitch that made it so, and huge amounts of money were paid out under a regular tort law structure, and that hurts nuclear.
That's infuriating, right in my backyard, literally. Like,
right,
you know, like
of course, but and like you should be compensated.
It's a long jog, bike, you know, but like.
And like, of course, there should be compensation for communities that are, you know, susceptible to any type of contamination, but let it come out of the liability framework and the insurance pool designed for it.
Right. Okay, and so with this new authority that DOE's been given, like.
So if DOE is going to be setting up these nuclear projects in the contracts, I forget who they've awarded. Let's use Oklo, for instance. They'll have to channel liability as the operator, because it's under their program.
They'll have to channel liability as the
operator. The liability will be on them if something goes wrong because of the Price-Anderson Act. And this is actually good because you don't want the cost of liability to be channeled to ratepayers like you and me in our utility bills.
And if you channel it to the private company, then they can't take the risk. Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's good. That's a good thing for the industry, right?
It's good. It's good. And to your point, it like completely circumvents NRC regulations.
Gives them a chance to go and build something. Try it out. Yeah.
It does. You know, unlike fusion, where like, prototypes, devices, they all can be built in advance, make a demonstration of it.
Well, and it's funny that you're saying that they don't want to be characterized as nuclear. We ran into that. I ran into a fusion company, and then I was like, "Hey, you guys should join the Colorado Nuclear Alliance." And they're like, "No, we're not going to join the Colorado Nuclear Alliance. We're not.
At least not yet. Like,
and I was like, "What? But you're nuclear fusion, like."
But the risk profiles are so different. Like, you've got to at least assert some distinction now because there's not a licensing framework yet. The worst case scenario would be for the NRC to like need to license individual fusion devices and fusion facilities like a nuclear reactor. That would be horrible. It would be like if the FAA had to certify and license every individual aircraft. Like, the airlines industry would halt completely. You know, it should
just
be
like the nuclear fission industry halted, right? Like.
Well, and once these designs get approved, we hope that it is just like rinse and repeat.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the goal. But we're not at the end of once we get first steel into the ground, electrons onto the grid, we're in a whole new game.
Yeah. Okay, energy and energy demands. I think we mentioned that briefly. Do you have thoughts on kind of the current existing market? You know, I mean, everyone knows we've been flat on electricity for a long time. Now you can't escape like a day of news or podcast without hearing people talk about electricity growth and power demand. But how do you view like from a legal framework? Like, are these data centers going to be harder to permit than some nuclear power plants? Probably not. I don't know. You
Probably not.
probably can't speak to data centers, but
And I use Virginia as a case study, and I'm going to like pull out an Economist article quote really quickly,
okay,
just like a
great.
super quick quote. But like,
Like I've got it on hand. No big deal. Like,
yeah. The Americans' GDP is growing at 2%. That's what they said, which is normal for a developed country. But the 40% of that growth is attributed to AI and data centers coming online, which they don't say up front. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge number. AI is doing the heavy lifting. And then I look at Virginia, which is as a case study, because let's just call it data center capital right now. Dominion reports, I think, 40 gigawatts of contracted or pending data center load. That's double last year. Data centers already consume 26% of Virginia's electricity, which is expected to grow 30, 40, 50% by 2030.
wow.
And like PJM, they're all warning of shortfalls that could happen as early as like end of this year, early next year in these zones. Think the grid is old. I'm pretty sure when it came online, movie tickets were $4. Like there are parts of it that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old.
Yep.
So there is like a question of like, how can this work? How can this happen? And like one way to stay ahead of these challenges, and I'm just now off the cuff, but like obviously accelerate clean energy deployment, all of it, wind, solar, nuclear storage, all of it, and streamline permitting, like the talking points, modernize interconnection and permitting. Like I last checked, the interconnection queue was still like 5 years long. And like, you can see that this is happening. So DOE just announced last week, they just put out an RFI where they're going to be giving over 100,000 acres of DOE federal land at the Idaho National Laboratory to private development of AI data centers co-located with new energy projects with a preference for nuclear and geothermal. So that's a super unique opportunity. That's new.
Yeah. That coincides with there's like a data center conference in INL.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Because I think they had an industry day recently.
Yeah.
And I think they're taking applications like through November 7th. And like, this is a huge deal because like, it just is an example of like, this should be also happening in Virginia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like incentivizing opportunities to like co-locate clean energy, Q nuclear with data centers. They shouldn't be able to stand them up without it.
Yeah. That's great perspective. So we talked about financing. Do you have other thoughts on like corporate structure and like there's a lot of companies going public now, right? We said Fermi's going public. Oaklow's performed really well, the public equities, but I don't know. Do you have a view on corporate structure?
So like there's no one size fits all. And I'm getting my words together here. If you
It's okay.
There's the right financing corporate structure mechanism really depends on the role you want to play. So if you want to be both owner and operator of the plant, like a power purchase agreement, a long-term power purchase agreement, or even a contract for difference is going to be able to provide the revenue certainty that you want, at least to make the project investable. But if you're more interested in just owning the facility, like Dow and X Energy, Dow will be the owner and they'll bring on a third party to operate, letting someone else run it. Or maybe a regulated asset-based model would be the better fit because it gives predictable utility style returns without any of the operational risk being taken on. Then you have companies like TerraPower and X Energy exploring federal support. And those come with offtake agreements, which help make those projects more financeable. So like, there's a lot of different ways it's a full Rubik's Cube, just depending on how you want, what risk you want and how you want it to run. So like being an owner and an operator versus just an owner. I sort of mentioned this already, but like so much VC money in this space right now. There's always been some investment, like look at example, Bill Gates and TerraPower, but it's now that on steroids. Like there are more entities entering the market, heavily capitalized by VCs. And the one downside is that bets are being placed potentially on failing products, but there's a lot of FOMO. If you have a good slide deck, VC is going to throw money at it.
Yeah.
But this
there's
is
a lot of-
ultimately changing, and it's putting pressures on the regulatory state because the NRC was designed under a utility paradigm using large light water reactors as the operational mode. And now they're just dealing with new companies, no utilities in sight. And maybe utilities will want to come on the scene after some of these are proven and stood up and the risk is descaled. But it's a little bit of the Wild West with all of the financing and corporate restructuring that's going on.
Interesting. Why does that matter? Like the different financing structure and the impact that like the regulator or impact on the regulator. I guess they're used to dealing with utilities, but then like these VC backed startups show up and they're like, hey, we want to move fast. Like,
yeah, government agencies move so slowly, like really all of them. And they're so precedent based. They operate so well in areas of familiarity and comfort.
we have a
And
form. We fill out the
correct.
form.
Correct.
I
And does this meet the
I don't
checklist?
know how to check this box, or I can't check this box.
And no one wants to be like
go?
the face of like a first of a kind novel policy or decision, especially with nuclear, because it could be scary. I mean, I don't know, but like I find that being in the private sector, we can make legal arguments to push the NRC that like, I understand if you're the regulator, you would be weary to like want to implement, but like, it's way more fun on the private side. It's way more fun to be the person to push these arguments. I'll give an example. If you were going to be submitting a licensing action for a large light water reactor, the NRC has a hearing process in place where a member of the public can like request a hearing on it or try to intervene to stop the process, whatever it is. If it's like an application for construction or even like an amendment to the license, really anything. And the first part of the hearing process to be initiated is that the person raising the request for a hearing or intervention needs to show standing. They need to show traditional standing, that they have a potential injury that would be caused from the licensing action. The NRC for large light water reactors has like a standing shortcut called proximity standing, essentially saying that if you live within 50-mile radius of the licensing action being submitted, you in essence have standing, like just by virtue of proximity. Okay. Which
that doesn't make any
makes
sense to me. Like,
which is sort of a low bar given how few nuclear accidents there have been
and
at
zero
a large
public
reactor.
deaths.
100%.
Like, so what standing does anyone have? Like,
Exactly.
it harmed me. You're gonna hurt me.
Exactly. They love to say it. Anti-nuclear groups, members of the community, like people love to say it. We fight them all the time. But now that new advanced reactor applications are going in, people are going to be challenging these left and right, requesting hearings, interventions. People are scared. The risk profiles, we already know the risk profiles for an advanced reactor, a microreactor, are vastly different than a large-scale reactor. But the NRC's policies for admitting a hearing or granting an intervention have not changed. So you will see a company, a NuScale, an Oklo, an X Energy submit an application to the NRC for a construction permit or an operating permit or a combined COLA, construction and operating. And people from the community, members of the public, anti-nuclear groups are going to make the same arguments to standing that they would have for a large light water reactor. They're going to include a proximity standing argument. And like, my team, we love every chance we get to put an argument together that proximity standing should not exist for an advanced reactor application. Makes zero sense. Will the NRC say they agree? Will they change this hurdle and make it more difficult for people to impede on this type of work? I don't know. And like, I do know the staff and I know the people who are signing the decisions that are going to be on the other side of the arguments we're making, and they're junior. And I, you know what I mean? And like, I try to put myself in the shoes of like that person. And I'd like to think I'm forward thinking enough and I like support the industry enough and I'm like technologically savvy enough to like say like, yeah, there shouldn't be proximity standing in an advanced reactor license application.
See, I don't understand the hazard.
Yeah.
Like, what is that junior person protecting against?
I don't know. I don't know.
We're sitting here too, like I'd call us like pretty smart
Yeah.
nuclear
Yeah.
experts. We can put that in air
Yeah.
quotes, nuclear experts, but
Yeah.
like, and we're like, wait, so you've got a regulatory.
It's scary. Maybe a fear of like overturned decision, fear of like the NRC not taking safety into, I don't know, because like, and we're
Well,
going to
but
go.
you're like just tracing it upstream or downstream or whatever. Like, okay, so you have a release and some radioactive dust gets into the environment, and
And
then
so super unlikely.
that like somebody breathes it in, they get cancer. Is that what we're protecting against? Like,
No, because that's not traceable. Like that, you can't, you'd have to presume that person doesn't smoke. Like there's too much, you know what I mean? Like there's too
like
many other
that's
factors that can be
we're
involved.
compared all the right and prove causation with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You get
so
really legal on like how this works, but that's
yeah,
why like proximity standing, sure. If you live within 50 miles of the reactor core of a large scale light water reactor, the NRC was more lenient on granting standing. Um,
which I just
that
think is like silly. Like
it is,
I
but
disagree
that
with.
framework, and mind you, there's another component that these people have to prove in order to get a hearing or to have a successful intervention. They also have to have an admissible contention, which the bar for that is much higher. But the standing piece, like instantly, these requests for a hearing and intervention should be thrown out instantly on for proximity standing being asserted on an advanced reactor license application.
Yeah.
And this is happening right now. So like I can't like get too deep into like the arguments and the details and like who's saying what, but you will see it soon.
Yeah. Nice. Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Stephanie, this has been fantastic. We're running out of time, but
Sure.
leave us with I can tell we're gonna have to have you back, but I feel like we've covered, I mean, shoot, we've been all over the gamut. We got some of your background, we got licensing, we got some export controls, corporate structure, investment. Like, I think this wasn't meant to be a commercial for you and your firm, but it might have turned out that way. If like,
I can't help
hey,
it. Like we do such great work, and like, yes, it's with advanced reactors, but like in the existing nuclear fleet. But like, I also have worked with Amazon on ensuring that Amazon sellers don't have uranium in their products, and like put together frameworks and internal procedures on like how they can know. You know, we also worked with a well-known apparel company that had radioactive contamination show up in a shipment of their product at customs, and like it's so fun to talk to rooms of executives on like decay chain and like trying to explain that to them. You know, I explain it as like, imagine your family tree, you've got your grandparents and your in-laws coming to visit you for 30 years and they don't leave, you know, and I think they got it. But like, you know, if we're talking about like cesium-137. So like,
nice.
it's really all the things. And it's right now is such an exciting time because like there's so much momentum. If we can't get it right now, I worry public opinion will change, but it's a really fun time to be talking about this right now.
Yeah. Well, let blue sky this for us. Like, what's it going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years? And let's make it optimistic, right? I mean, I know
Yeah.
lawyers can have a tendency to defer to pessimism, but like, you know.
Yeah, let's assume that the reactors being built under DOE's reactor program, sans NRC licenses, are the prototypes of the industry.
Okay.
And they'll demonstrate, you know, all of this passive safety features that advanced reactors are supposed to have, and the smaller cores and like the less radioactive materials that are going to be associated with it. And then the NRC all of a sudden gets Part 53 stood up, and there's enough shift within the agency that they get rid of proximity standing for a license application for an advanced reactor. And all of a sudden companies are getting permitted for construction and they're breaking ground and steel is going in. I think we will get to an nth of a kind construction situation. We will be advancing partnerships with international players. Hopefully, you know, mass deployment of AP1000s, working with the Koreans, Team Korea, on their technology of reactor. And I think once we can just get this like really awkward phase of like strong push, nothing existing yet, and getting the NRC comfortable licensing these on mass scale. Like once you have one license, you don't need another license again. You don't have to come back and recertify every aircraft.
General environmental impact statement.
It's just binding across the board.
Yep.
I think once we get to that, I think we can get there. I understand the hesitation and I understand the skepticism, but I think we can get there. All of the pieces of the puzzle are in place. It just needs to start happening.
I love it. Stephanie, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I can tell we're going to have you back on. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.